full disclosure, I made one of probably my most careless mistakes that I'm super embarrassed about, but I am going to share it with you guys. What's up, guys? We got Project 428 sitting behind me here, and we are just wrapping up the last few items of this 5.0 swap, and that is mainly targeting the suspension and the brakes. So the owner stopped by today and dropped off the hood liner, which you can see bolted up on the underside of the hood here. And it's been really nice having him involved and giving him a few tasks, because he wanted to be involved and to put his own little touch on a few of the items here. And I think that that's really important, because it shows his true enthusiasm and passion for the vehicle and the project. And I think he wanted to do it, of course, because it's a surprise for his daughter. So having him involved and included in the project, I think, is a really nice touch for this car. Right now, I'm going to focus on pulling the front suspension apart. So I'm going to be taking out the 4-cylinder spindles, the 4-cylinder brakes, and getting that swapped over to 5-liter spindles and stock 5.0 calipers, which I've got sitting on the table back here that I sandblasted down, cleaned all up yesterday. So those are sitting all fresh. Got a new set of brake pads on the way. So we get those installed. In this case, we wanted to make sure that all the braking and everything is true the way that it would have been should the car have originally come as a 5.0 optioned car when it was bought new. On the ground behind me here, we can see the differential and the sway bars. They've been just kind of hammered out, and I pulled all of the brakes and the shoes and everything off the rear diff. So hopefully this will get sandblasted today, and we'll be able to get that all cleaned up and be able to get the rear end swapped. So once we got that suspension and everything done, then we can actually bolt the ponies back on, because you put some elbow grease into those as well. So you got those all polished back up, so we'll be able to get those bolted on the car. Then we'll check out the stance. Might be cutting a little bit of coil material out of here to get it sitting right, but we'll see what the look and feel is, and then we'll go from there. Front end here, so we got the 4-cylinder spindle out, the brake caliper still dangling there. I'll get that removed when we're ready to reassemble everything, just because I don't want to lose a whole bunch of brake fluid. So you can see that this California car brought the beach with it from California. There's a thick coating on everything, but the good news is underneath that coating, everything is really nice, shiny, and clean. So I've got a bunch of engine shampoo that I've gone ahead and sprayed on that lower control arm, and to get all the parts that I can cleaned up here. This car really needs a good pressure washing from the underside, because the whole underside of the car is actually like this. So with that said, I'm going to let that soak in there. Let's go back, because Dale is actually working on sandblasting the rear end that's going to be going in the car. So it's chilly out. He's out here blasting away. So what I'm doing now is I'm actually going to take the rotor off. That's going to give me better access to the lower nut and bolt that holds the strut on. So we're getting things ready to bolt back together in our front end here. And a couple little things I wanted to share with you guys. First thing was taking the ball joint and tie rod castle nuts off. The cotter pins that were in there were completely rusted, and so I just cut the ends off, jammed the socket on, got the nuts off, but had to literally drill the old cotter pins out, which was a serious pain, but managed to get them out and everything cleaned up, so that's good. The second part of this is that we are going to be keeping the 4-cylinder struts that were in the car. Now, in appearance, they look the same, but there are a couple little differences, especially here for this 91. The first one being is that the space here in the opening that accepts the spindle is quite a bit larger for the 4-cylinder, believe it or not. So when I stick this in here, you can actually see that play. There's probably a good 1/4 inch of play in there, and that's because the thickness of the housing of the 4-cylinder spindle is actually fatter. So no big deal. This is quite common just between different strut manufacturers and companies and years of your Fox body. So note that we got to put some spacers in here to make sure that we take up that extra slack between this bracket on the strut and the surface of the spindle. So the next part of this is that the holes are actually a little bit more together on this strut, and it's so small. We're talking like I'm taking maybe 1/8 of an inch off, maybe at best, just a little bit above and a little bit below on the bottom here, and that's going to allow the strut bolts to go through the housing. So there's probably the best example. You can see on that bottom one, there's material there. It's not that much, so by reaming out these holes just a little bit, that'll give us the clearance that we need to be able to use these struts. What's up, guys? You actually have to change the brake line brackets that go on the inner frame rail. The ones for the 5-liter have a little notch in them, and that allows for the brake line on your 5.0 caliper to clip into the bracket properly. I ended up cutting a coil out of these springs, one full coil, and I have the isolators reinstalled, so it should be a pretty good stance on the car after. And so I'll get this installed. So I got the piston of the brake caliper all reseated inside here, so that way it can accept our new Bosch brake pads, which, interestingly enough, instead of having plastic or bubble wrap inside, came with this nice little shop towel. So I guess they want you to keep your hands clean, more environmentally friendly. Who knows, maybe it costs the same or even costs less, but I thought it was a pretty nice touch. Long day here, getting all the front end buttoned back together on the 4-to-8 conversion. And if you look behind me, the stance is looking pretty aggressive on this driver's side. And I personally don't mind this stance, but full disclosure, I made one of probably my most careless mistakes that I'm super embarrassed about, but I am going to share it with you guys. I accidentally cut the same spring too many times, and I put it in and the car is sitting too low. So what happened was, I originally started by cutting out half a coil, and I figured with the weight of the 5.0 on a 4-cylinder spring, that would get everything to sit perfectly. So I had actually started on the passenger side before the driver's side, and when I was trying to put that passenger side spring in and I had the isolators and everything on, man, I was wrestling that thing. I could not get it in. The control arm was pretty much sitting perpendicular, and I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna have to cut another half coil out. So I must have cut half a coil, then got distracted and grabbed the other spring. Meanwhile, that other spring, I managed to wrestle it in there because I knew even half a coil would still be, challenging to get it in, but I managed to get it in. Dropped the car down, everything looked good. Got to the driver's side, and I'm like, okay, I need to cut half a coil out of this spring. So I cut half a coil out, go to put it in the car, and it went in super easy. And as soon as I put the car down, there's the result. So that is a coil and a half cut out of a 4-cylinder spring. Bring you guys around here. That is half a coil cut out of a 4-cylinder spring. So although I like the look of the driver's side, I'm pretty sure that the customer is wanting a height that looks more like this. So that is my up of today. And you know, I expect to make some mistakes here or there. When it comes to suspension, that's something where I shouldn't be making mistakes. That's like my thing, my trademark. So a little bit of a setback, you know, I'm gonna have to jack the car back up, pull the calipers off, undo the bolts for the struts, get the springs out. So now, hoping a friend of mine, I know he's got a set of 4-cylinder springs in a car. I'm hoping that he has a set not in the car. I really just need one. So I just need to fix that driver's side. Or if he has another set, it's fine, because I'm happy to keep these springs. And James, the owner, I'm sorry you had to find out this way about what happened here. Little mix up, but I'm gonna make it right. Either way, it's not like I ruined that spring, because I like that height and I'll be able to use this set if need be. Otherwise, if we get that other spring, we'll get it sorted out. And almost ready for the back, guys. So got our sway bars painted up, rear and front. Got our drums, got the rear end all sandblasted and everything. It's that last inch of the mile that always drags on, and you run into these little things because there was so much momentum, everything was going so quick. Well, trying to wrap things up, but also do it properly. So today it's back to school day, and I have the old school Haynes manual. Not sure how many of you guys have these. I actually had one when I was a teenager. I think it was actually red, not blue. But we're opened up to the drum rear brake pages, and got some tools here. Got a new kit, new springs, new shoes, and all of the brackets and everything I've sandblasted down and given them a coat of paint, so everything is looking nice and fresh. Got a new wheel cylinder already bolted on there. So I'm gonna go ahead and try and figure out how this all goes back together, because it's been that long. Normally it's always been dealing with disc. And so yeah, this is a little bit of a throwback to my memory. Anyways, we'll get the job done. And once these brakes and drums are all back on here, pull the diff cover off, drain out the fluid, make sure everything is looking good in there, and actually need to pop the axles out, and we'll be replacing the axle seals in there too, so that everything is nice, fresh, and clean. And lastly, we will need to run some new brake line up to the distribution block there on the top of the pumpkin, and have that all ready for when we go to bolt it into our 8.8 swap car, which we will have to be extending a little piece of brake line too, but I'll show you guys that once the car's in the air and we're ready to put this guy in. So Dale won't let me do the brake lines because he says he's the master, and nobody can match his ninja brake line bending, fitting skills.
Great, now I'm gonna be busier at hell because everybody's gonna watch the brake lines.
The ocean, so.
Making a mess. You have a shitty right here.
Yeah, right here. What a guy. Spills fluid all over the place on me. Now I smell like differential fluid, which is the worst fluid smell in the world.
No, it's not the worst fluid smell in the world.
Oh.
Have you ever had a potato that is rotten leak down your back?
No.
Trust me, this isn't that bad.
All right, guys, so time to fill the diff. The diff takes 2 quarts or 1.8 liters of diff fluid, so your 80-90 weight, and 4 ounces of friction modifier. So I got this little container here that I'm reusing just because I got a big 5-gallon pail, so just need something to measure it. Go ahead, pour it all in. Got our gasket maker on the diff cover sitting there, setting up. And we'll get that thing bolted on, and then everything should be good to go here, and this diff ready to get installed into the car. So here we are on Friday and trying to make stuff happen. Got the car jacked back up, got the springs ripped out, and now we can actually see my little bit of a mix up here. So hopefully we can get this car sitting level and straight. So here's what happened. Here's our 4-cylinder springs sitting right here. You can see this one has got about an extra coil missing compared to this guy. Now on the left side here, these are original 5.0 springs. These actually came out of Notorious's donor car, which he won't be using. So what I'm going to do is, if you actually kind of line these guys up, so if we were to take a full coil out of this one, that would almost line us up where we want to be. However, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go 1.5 coils, and that'll bring us to about here. So it's going to be a little bit shorter, but these guys are stiffer, so we should be all right with our ride height. So we'll get this trimmed up, everything put back in, and go from there. So the springs are swapped. Just going to put this thing down. Let's see if it's sitting the way that it should, and fingers crossed, no more hiccups. It's coming down. It's coming down. More better. Sitting straight. Nothing too low, just right. All right, so now that the car is sitting the way that it should, I'm gonna go ahead and do a little bit of a poor man's alignment. You can see I've run some big boards that are right up against those front wheels. And if you look straight down the side of the car, they are pointed in a little bit, so we need to adjust that toe. Same thing on the driver's side here. This one's actually worse. So first thing, made sure the steering wheel's straight. Gonna go down underneath and knock those tie rods loose, and which they should be okay. The car's fairly clean, and just ever so slightly get that toe out. That'll get it at least in alignment shop, and then everything can be zeroed into spec. So there we go. You can see behind me, got the board nice and straight. Sometimes it's hard. There's a little bit of an illusion just the way with the way that the front fender and the nose cone curves. So what you can do is you can use a measuring tape, double check everything. So you just want to make sure that everything is straight. Keep checking your steering wheel. So we'll go underneath here. Had to move that tie rod out probably a good 1/2 inch, and so that's it. We'll get this tightened up and go over to the driver's side. So here we go. After some eyeballing, some measuring, everything is looking fairly straight. Measures up pretty straight. The steering wheel is straight. So it's always interesting to see when it gets to the alignment shop and they pull the specs, and then you actually can challenge yourself and see how close can you get the alignment specs on without having all the fancy lasers and all of that they have with the machines these days. So that'll be interesting to see. Hopefully she drives down the road straight. So the front suspension was pretty straightforward, you know, just swapping over the spindles. The biggest pain in the ass was the cotter pins that we had to drill out of the tie rod and the ball joints. But other than that, everything bolted together really nice. And I'm happy that we're going to be getting some new struts up there as well. We did that poor man's alignment, so everything is pretty straight in terms of being able to get the car to an alignment shop. In terms of the rear end, got that thing sandblasted, all cleaned up, new shoes, new brake hardware, new nickel lines, new axle seals, and serviced the fluid. So that's been changed up with some So we got diff fluid and some friction modifier in there. So that diff should be good to go for a long time. We'll do a final wrap up video on this and we'll go over those different options. If any of you guys are curious or wanting to potentially do a 5.0 swap, 4 cylinders are definitely a good candidate these days. As every year goes on, people care less and less if the car was originally a 5.0 or not. People just want a clean Fox, which is proving to be a bigger and bigger challenge every day that goes by. So sometimes you can still find that old 4-cylinder Fox body, you know, grandma's old car or maybe a barn find or something like that, but it could be a potential real good base for you to end up with the 5.0 of your dreams. So thanks again for following along. Thanks for subscribing. If you're not, do so. Turn on the notification bell. I really appreciate all your support and everybody who watches these videos. I think 2021 has kicked off to a pretty good start. I got some really good stuff coming for the rest of the year. So thanks again for tuning in. We'll see you guys next time.